Alright, I've waited long enough. There's a book I've been wanting to talk about on this show for the better part of a year now, but I wasn't really sure if anyone would care about it the way I do. I mean, everyone loves the movie, but the book is strange. It's something else for sure. A kind of story I feel I haven't seen almost anywhere else. I'm talking about the book The Princess Bride by William Goldman. This thing is so underappreciated. It really feels good to finally... What? You don't think it's a good idea? Oh, not enough dragons and aliens, huh? You think this one's going to be boring? Well, how about this? I'll put the movie on for you, and then you can tell me I was wrong afterward. Deal? Yeah, that's exactly what I was worried about. People hear the name The Princess Bride and assume it's going to be some played-out fairy tale fantasy. I mean, I guess it is that, but there's something really special about it too. Something that goes way beyond the fantasy creatures, the memorable characters, and the insanely quotable dialogue. The movie gives you a taste of it, but there's nothing like the book itself. This isn't a story about a princess. It's not even really a fantasy story. It's a story about imagination. It's about the value of your personal fantasies, your personal adventures, and your love for them. Which is why I think anyone who reads or writes or enjoys fiction at all should give it a try. Even you high fantasy and hard SF nerds. Trust me. Actually, you don't have to trust me. Let me tell you about it. Right after I get them started with their movie. Be back in a sec. Did you know that we make more than YouTube videos? It's true. Like this video about an epic fantasy where the world itself basically has genitalia, or this dive into the weird pseudo-sci-fi fantasy magic of Dune. You can see them all over on Nebula by signing up for the CuriosityStream Nebula bundle deal for just $14.79 a year. That's less than $125 a month. Visit curiositystream.com/TaleFoundry and use code TaleFoundry. A lot of people out there would probably say that The Princess Bride is their favorite story in all the world, even though they don't really know it at all. I mean, they know what's in it. They love it for the fencing, the fighting, the torture, poison, true love, hate, revenge, giants, hunters, bad men, good men, beautifulest ladies, snakes, spiders, beasts of all nature and descriptions, pain, death, brave men, coward men, strongest men, chases, escapes, lies, truths, passion, miracles. That's all part of the story, the fun stuff. But there's so much more in the book, and it means so much to me as a creative. It's a story that says my imagination and my experiences matter. Yes, I love the fencing and the fighting and the true love and all of that, but this is more than an exciting fantasy story. It's also a true story. I'm not being poetic when I say that The Princess Bride is also about the writing of The Princess Bride. Seriously, like 1/3 of the book is just the author telling the tale of how the book came to be. He put that stuff into the actual book. It's really jarring at first, but it's also probably among my favorite things I've ever seen an author do. If you've seen the movie, you've seen a glimpse of this. It begins with a grandfather reading the book to his grandson. But that's not just cinematic framing. It's actually a part of the true story of the author, William Goldman. This actually happened to him. Which is why, although Goldman wrote the story we all know now, he starts the book by telling us that it's his favorite story in all the world too, even though he's never read it. You may, very reasonably, wonder how such a thing is possible. Well, I'll tell you. The book and the movie as we know them are actually only abridgments of another book entirely. An original, much older, much longer novel, also called The Princess Bride. A book that Goldman was first introduced to long before he was author William Goldman, and he was still just 10-year-old Billy. Which is where our story begins. Billy was not a particularly well-read child. He loved games of every variety, loved to go out and have fun, as all boys do, but his grades were a mess. And books. You could forget books. He hated them. You couldn't get him to look at one, much less read it for pleasure. So, almost illiterate and resistant to most species of education, inventing things to do and ways to have fun in his own little world, life seemed to be slipping right on by. "What are we going to do about Billy?" was a very common expression in his house. That was until the autumn of 1941, when Billy got sick. He may have been resistant to education, but he was not so lucky against pneumonia. He spent about 10 days in the hospital, and then another few weeks in bed afterward, bored out of his mind, almost too weak to utter a sound. It was in this hostage state that his father, an older man from the distant country of Florin, barely able to speak a lick of English himself, took the opportunity to introduce his son to a book. A book written by someone called S. Morgenstern.
Chapter 1. The Bride.
His father read, and little Billy was too weak to protest. In that room, between his illness-induced fatigue and his father's immigration-induced struggle to share the story, something happened to Billy. He began to change. For the first time ever, he was hooked on a book. He wanted to know what would happen to the beautiful Princess Buttercup and poor, heroic Wesley. He wanted to know what would happen to Inigo, the greatest swordsman in the history of the world. He wanted to know, was Fezzik the Giant really as strong as he seemed? And were there limits to the cruelty of Vizzini, the schemer? He wanted to know what came next, and that desire followed him through the rest of his life. From that point on, he was obsessed with adventure stories. Anything he could get his hands on. Stevenson, Scott, Dumas, D'Artagnan, even Victor Hugo, which I can tell you from experience is not easy reading, especially for a young boy. That obsession never diminished. In fact, it only increased as he got older, to the point that he wound up writing over a dozen novels of his own and nearly 20 screenplays. And this was how little Billy became the author William Goldman. But it's not how the Princess Bride became the Princess Bride. Decades pass before that happens. In the meantime, Goldman manages to get himself pretty well set up, making a living through the work he loves, traveling around to work on screenplays, selling his novels, all that glamorous stuff most writers dream about doing but rarely enjoy writing enough to actually do. By this point, he even has a family, although he rarely sees them and they're not exactly the people he imagined they would be. His son Jason is aloof and disinterested, a little like he was as a boy, and his wife is much the same. Nevertheless, while working on a screenplay for the Stepford Wives in California, it strikes him that Jason is about to turn 10, the exact age he was when his father read him The Princess Bride for the first time. Unfortunately, he can't be there to read the book to his son himself, but he pulls some strings, dredges up one of the last copies anyone can find, and has it delivered for Jason to read. Jason knows it's a big deal to his dad, so when he sees Goldman again, he pretends he really loved the book. But his father can see through it. When pressed, it becomes apparent that Jason didn't even manage to get past the first chapter. The book is just too boring. It drones on and on about nothing for ages, he says. Shocked, heartbroken, Goldman snatches up the book and thumbs through the pages in disbelief. And it's true. The book is as dry as can be, full of Florinese history and customs and rambling author notes. Even though it does have the things he remembers in it, most of the book is clearly an academic satire of actual history, not an adventure story at all. Only then does he realize that he's never actually read the thing himself. Although all the other adventure stories in the world were his to read, explore, write, The Princess Bride had belonged to his father. It was a story he'd only ever heard in his father's voice, his father's way of telling it. That's simply how it was to him, and he'd never dare challenge it by touching the book himself. What he didn't know was that his father, perhaps knowing his son, had left out everything but the good parts. With his own voice and interpretation, Goldman's father shaped the rest of his life. And that book is the one he wants his son to read. That book deserves to exist. So Goldman decides then and there to put everything else on hold, including the Stepford Wives, which does him no great favors with the Hollywood brass, in order to write it. It'll be abridged the way his father had done it for him, the good parts only version. And that's how he got this book I'm holding in my hand now, the story we all know and love. Sort of. Actually, it's not really the version his father told him. It has Goldman all over and throughout it, cutting things at his own discretion, making his own comments, leaving his own footnotes. There are even some occasions where he leaves comments from the original author in the text, only to provide his own commentary on those comments. Sometimes he gets rid of a block of text from Morgenstern and then replaces it with his own block of text, explaining why there shouldn't be a block of text there in the first place. There's even a part of the story he's annoyed Morgenstern skipped over, and he says in the text that he would have written his own version into the abridgment, but the editor thought it was unethical and wouldn't let him put it into the book. Instead, they agreed that if anyone wants to read Goldman's take on the omitted scene, they could write in and ask the publisher to mail it to them. They really followed through on that, by the way. Goldman actually put that in the book itself, and people actually sent in for it. What they got instead was an explanation of the 13 lawsuits put forward by the Morgenstern estate preventing his sending out his version of that scene. But that's another story. The whole thing is honestly a bit messy and a little hypocritical. It's also wonderful and genuine and hilarious. It's where the movie gets its sly sense of humor, its odd, surreptitious self-awareness. The book might not be in his father's voice, but it's in that tradition, carrying Goldman's verbal quirks, his attitudes and ideals, opinions and perspectives, his desire for a story he personally feels is worth telling. That's the first lesson he ever learned about stories, after all, taught to him by his father in broken English back when he was still little Billy, sick in bed. The story you tell is the one that matters to you. You tell the good parts. That's how you change lives. Or at least that's how his life changed. I'm not sure it's absolutely true for every author and every story, but I still love the message. Tell the parts that matter to you. The Princess Bride has brought me a lot of joy, and Goldman's personal journey in writing it has touched my soul, made me feel as though I'm not wrong to prioritize my own desires as an artist. And it's weird because the message gets even more powerful when you realize that none of this is real. That's right, this is all a made-up story about writing the story that Goldman had the audacity to put into the actual text itself. The lawsuits, the relationship with his son, his old Florinese father, Florin the country itself, S. Morgenstern and his satiric old original. It's a fictional version of Goldman's life, written for the book. The question is, why? Why do this instead of just writing the core story itself? Why build all this lore about the author into the novel? Well, taken as a whole, my guess is that The Princess Bride is not actually about kissing and sword fighting and coming back from the dead. It's about romance. True romance. Not just the kind you see between lovers. The romance that makes the world vibrant and worth living in, even though in reality it can be a very stark, very cruel place. The real Goldman has a saying that I love. Something that made this whole story click for me and made me think about some of the attitudes of writers and artists I've known, including myself. He says that cynics are thwarted romantics. And I think The Princess Bride says that as well. Despite all of its whimsy and humor, let's not forget that this is a story where the protagonist dies twice, where the wrong people get married, where the bad guys win over and over and over. Although in the movie the story ends with the characters riding off into a happily ever after, in the book it ends with them realizing they're still being chased by the evil Prince Humperdinck and his men, the sounds of pursuit crescendoing around them in the night. And yet, despite all these signals from fate that it's time to surrender, the characters hold on. They try. Inigo climbs back from his drunken stupor and does avenge his father, even though he's mortally wounded in the process. Fezzik gets past his self-doubt and manages to use his own wits to save the day, even if he does end up leading the group into certain death not long after. Wesley and Buttercup find each other and true love in the end, even if there's an army at their backs trying to take it from them. For each of them, their ideals far outstrip their reality. They are romantics. And so is the fictional version of Goldman. By putting himself into the story this way, he shows us that romance isn't just reserved for fairy stories. Here is a man whose entire life, from the time he was a child being told a story to his later life as an author telling the stories of his own, has pursued the ideal that his stories are worth telling, that what he sees as the good parts matter more than what's accurate or expected. I don't know a huge amount about the life of the actual William Goldman, but I do know that he really did write a lot of novels and screenplays, and that I've hardly heard of any. The Princess Bride was a strange thing, nearly as magical to him in reality as it was to little made-up Billy. He did really come to it after a bout of pneumonia. He was riding a strange, delirious high of inspiration, and whenever he felt struck, he would just write something in his own voice as the fictional version of himself and come unstuck. He said he'd never experienced a flow quite like that, and I believe it. And later, after massive success, a film adaptation, merchandise, rampant quotation, and fame the world over for The Princess Bride, when he tried to write a sequel, it just wouldn't come together. He didn't have the same attachment, the same passion for the project he'd had with The Princess Bride. Despite the obvious appeal of its inevitable reception and what it could do for him financially, he didn't care about it the same way. So he didn't write it. He wrote other things, and again, you've probably never heard of them. And I think that's okay. The last words of the book are, "Life isn't fair. It's just fairer than death. That's all." This is true. Life is not an adventure story. True love does not always win the day. Heroes are not always rewarded for their efforts. Villains are not always defeated. People who don't deserve to suffer will. Stories that deserve to be told might never be. These things happen every day, and the ones who dare to dream are the most vulnerable of all. It would be easier to snuff those thoughts out, put them away, embrace the cynicism. Make only the art you think is guaranteed to be recognized. Do only the things you think are guaranteed to make a difference. That way you can feel safe. It doesn't matter what you want or believe. Reality will eat your heart if you reveal where it truly lies. So instead of doing what you love, you'd better do the right thing, the best thing. But I agree with Goldman. Although tempting, these are just the thoughts of a thwarted romantic. Life is unfair. All the more reason to hope and to strive and to snatch up each meaningful moment that you can, because they are so very precious. Instead of hiding your own voice because you think no one will care, speak and be eager just to hear what you sound like. Instead of writing the story you think will be a bestseller, write the one that matters to you, that you think should be told. Instead of allowing the romantic within you to die just because life is full of fluff and nonsense, remember to focus on what matters most to you. Only the good parts. Speaking of good parts, did you know that we make more than YouTube videos? It's true. Like this video about an epic fantasy where the world itself basically has genitalia, or this dive into the weird pseudo-sci-fi fantasy magic of Dune. You can see them over on our creator-owned streaming platform, Nebula. You can find all our videos there a week earlier than they upload on YouTube, plus all of these exclusive videos we only upload to Nebula. And we're not the only ones who have been posting there. The same is true for so many other amazing creators. YouTube is kind of a crazy place to make content. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to have this platform, but you have to be so careful about your topic choices, your packaging, what you include in the video. You just start to feel like you're walking on eggshells. As a streaming service, Nebula doesn't have any of those concerns. All of the videos there are high quality and trustworthy, which means there are next to no restrictions, which gives us a lot more freedom to do the things we really want to do. Which is really nice, because sometimes you just want to make the video you want to make without worrying about all the other stuff. And here's the really fun part. You can get Nebula for cheaper than almost any other streaming platform on the internet. Like less than $1.25 per month. That cheap. We want you to have access to our Nebula content, so we teamed up with another streaming platform called CuriosityStream, who will give you a whole year of Nebula for free when you sign up with them. So basically, 2 streaming services for less than $1.25 a month for your first year. And I cannot say enough about how much I love CuriosityStream as its own platform. Quality documentaries are hard to find, but quality documentaries about the things I care about, myths and monsters, literature, the madness of creative minds, yes, this is where I want to be. CuriosityStream has documentaries about everything. I actually just finished this one about where creativity comes from called Unraveling the Creative Mind, which, as an artist myself, it's just really good to get a feel for how my own head sort of works. Definitely a worthwhile watch. So, here's how to get all of our other exclusive content, all of Nebula, and all of CuriosityStream for less than $125 per month. All you have to do is click the link in the description or go to curiositystream.com/TaleFoundry and sign up for 1 year using the code TaleFoundry. That's it. And that first year is only going to be $14.79, which comes out to less than $125 per month. Frankly, I'm not quite sure how they can afford to do this for us, but I'm definitely not complaining. Seriously, take advantage of this offer while it's still going. I don't think any better one exists in the world of streaming. And once you've seen our other video on this topic, come back here and tell us what you think. We read almost every comment. Oh, did you just finish the movie? What'd you think? Well, I'm glad it left an impression. It tends to do that. And now that you've heard a little bit about where it came from, maybe you understand why. It's often these writers and artists who aren't afraid to speak with their true voice that have the greatest impact. I hope next time you think about what your inner romantic wants from you and your art, you'll feel emboldened not to argue quite so much, to look your ambition in the eyes and say, as you wish.